Listening. Types of ineffective listening and meeting the challenge of listening better. Listening consists of hearing, attending to, understanding, responding to, and remembering an oral message. It is a demanding and complex activity and is just as important as speaking in the communication process. If frequency is a measure of importance, then listening is easily the most prominent kind of communication. We spend more times listening to others than in any other type of communication. Listening may not always be easy, but one way to become better is to recognize some areas that need improvement. In the following slides, we will discuss types of ineffective listening. Pseudo-listening is an imitation of the real thing. These types of listeners give the appearance of being attentive. They'll look you in the eye, smile, nod, and maybe even answer occasionally, but pseudo-listeners use a polite facade to mask thoughts that have nothing to do with what the speaker is saying. They often ignore you because of something on their mind that is more important. Other times, they are simply bored or have just tuned you out. Stage hogging. Sometimes called conversational narcissists, they try to turn the topic of the conversation to themselves instead of showing interest in the speaker. One type of stage hogging is shift response. The listener changes the focus of the conversation from the speaker to themselves. Example: my math class is really tough. You think math is tough? You ought to try physics. Selective listening. Selective listeners respond only to parts of a conversation that interest them, and reject everything else. This obvious inattention can insult or hurt other people. Example: you ignore your professor until they begin talking about what is on an upcoming exam. Insulated listening. Simply failing to hear or acknowledge information. An insulated listener will nod or answer you and then promptly forget what you've said. Example: your parents remind you about how you haven't done your homework yet, and you quickly forget and continue watching TV. Defensive listening. Taking others' remarks as personal attacks. Defensive listeners are often suffering from shaky presenting images and avoid admitting to it by projecting their own insecurities onto others. Example: a parent views any questioning by her children as a threat to her authority. Ambushing. The person listens carefully to you, but only because they're collecting information they'll use to attack you. A good example of this is a cross-examining prosecution lawyer. Insensitive listening. These types of listeners aren't able to look beyond words and behaviors to understand their hidden meanings. Instead, they take a speaker's remark at face value. After learning about ineffective listening, you might think that listening seems impossible, but fortunately, with the right combination of attitude and skills, you can learn to listen better. You can become a more effective listener by following the following guidelines. Talk less. We have been given 2 ears and but a single mouth in order that we may hear more and talk less. But despite this, most of us talk too much. But talking less doesn't mean that you should remain silent. Feedback clarifies your understanding and allows you to seek new information. Get rid of distractions. Some distractions are external, such as a telephone ringing. Others are internal, such as a preoccupation with your own problems. Do everything possible to eliminate internal and external noise that interferes with careful listening. Don't judge prematurely. Most of us make snap judgments. We evaluate others before hearing them out. This often occurs when the speaker's ideas conflict with our own. It's important to learn to listen first, make sure that you understand, and then evaluate. Look for key ideas. It's easy to become impatient with a speaker who never seems to get to the point or doesn't have a point at all. Learn to extract the central idea from the surrounding mass of words. If you can't figure out what the speaker is trying to say, use response skills to ask in a tactful way.